I wanted to talk about this today, and there's a couple of guys who aren't on this call, but they'll watch the recording because they asked some asked some questions to me over the last few days, and I want to do a little bit of a refresher with sales and retention in particular. I'm going to talk about retention next week as well because there's so much more I can get into, and I'm just not going to have enough time in today's training. But I'm going to primarily focus on kind of to your point, Justin, in terms of like just focusing on the most important and let's say like the 80/20, like what are 20% of my daily action steps that I'm taking every single day that actually contribute to 80% of my results, aka money that you guys make, right, from your clients. That's how I design this is specifically when it comes to the sales process and specifically for online coaching or hybrid coaching. What exactly are those elements that we need to double down on, make sure that we're focused on so that we're seeing the results that we want to see inside of our coaching business? And one of the main elements when it comes to this stuff is some of you guys who have been in the mastermind for a little bit, there's going to be a little bit of overlap inside of this training, but that's a good thing. And the reason why it's a good thing is because Hormozy talks about this a lot. Sometimes you need to be reminded more than you need to be taught, right? And even for me, like I'm teaching you guys this stuff, and there's some elements where I'm like, I need to do better at that, or I need to be more consistent in this area. And mastering the basics is very important, especially for you guys on this call and some of you guys watching the recordings. There's so especially for online coaching, there's so much that you can focus on, right? For you guys, the question becomes, okay, what's the most important few things that I can focus on that's going to get me to where I want to go in the most efficient way? And that's exactly how I designed this training today. So sit back, take some notes. Obviously, we'll do a bit of a Q&A at the end as well for any questions that you guys have. And then we'll go from there. So first thing that I want to get into, and for some of you guys who are listening to the podcast or just quickly watching the recording, I'll read this out to you. Sorry, it's a little pixelated. I had to blow it up on this slide, but I'm inside of a very high level marketing group I'm part of, and the owner of that group, who's probably one of the biggest marketing gurus in the space, he made this post this morning. Okay, so I'm going to read it to you. So the biggest weight loss company in the game just laid off half its staff. Why? Because of the Ozempic effect. Consumers aren't buying weight loss offers like before. They'd rather take something from a doctor than a video sales letter. One of the other offers that I know burned $6,000 to make three sales. This is the same one that pulled off 18 million just 3 years ago. So if you're in that market and you're facing massive resistance, now you know why. So I know there's only a couple people on this call, but raise your hand if this scares you a little bit. A little bit for you guys, a little bit for you, Justin. David, no. All right, hell yeah. Here's here's the issue with this, right? Because this is a pill, obviously, right? This is a magic pill, essentially, in terms of how it's framed and why a lot of people are taking it. And the comment section inside of this post that I saw this morning just absolutely blew up in a good way, like a lot of really healthy discussion, different angles and different people talking about different elements in terms of what they're doing with their marketing, what they're doing with their coaching to kind of combat what this is and kind of the new industry that we're in. Because when I started in online health and fitness coaching, my biggest competitors were like actual competition in terms of like my different trainers, in-person trainers, people on YouTube, things like that. Like that's what I needed to market against. For you guys, it's different. Now, you guys have different ideal clients, and obviously the problem that you solve is differentiated between everybody who's watching this recording. But your competition is ChatGPT. Your competition is Ozempic. Your competition is everything else that I just said too. YouTube trainers, blah, 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 different trainers down the road, online coaches, whatever it may be. So there's a lot more that you guys need to think about. But the beautiful thing is, and that's what I'm going to teach in today's training, understanding how you can differentiate yourself from this market is key. And this is a really cool comment I'm about to share after I pose some of these questions to you, because it's easier than you think. But when it comes to coaching and when it comes to sales, you want to have answers to these questions, right? Even if, let's say, just humor me for a minute, like, even if you don't have answers to this right now, or even if some of these different alternatives, let's say, your ideal clients aren't thinking about or aren't taking, whatever it may be, you should still have some answers to these questions. Why should I hire you versus take Ozempic, right? That's one. Why should I hire you versus get my programming on ChatGPT? ChatGPT answers my questions way faster than you could ever answer my questions, right? So why should I hire you instead of going through ChatGPT? Why should I hire you instead of the competition, depending on who your competition is? Maybe a few people come to mind, maybe a few companies or gyms or whatever it may be come to mind. But when it comes to sales, which is what I'm talking about today, you want to have answers to these questions. The reason why you want to have answers to these questions is because your ideal client has these questions in their mind. They do. Maybe not when they have the sales conversation with you, but when they're going through your content, whatever it may be, your marketing, they have some of these questions in their mind, maybe not even consciously, but subconsciously, right? They're just kind of in the back of their mind. They don't even know it's there, but it's there. It's there. So for you guys, especially when it comes to marketing, because marketing and sales go hand in hand, you want to make sure that you have some messages, you have some content that tackles some of these questions, because this is where the psychology of sales slowly starts to take place. So, going back, I actually skipped a slide here. I want to make sure here we go. Here. Going back to sales and Ozempic, let's say, for example, this is a comment that I read under that post that I just shared with you guys, and it's very, very good. It explains exactly what I'm gonna get into inside of today's training. So I'll read it out loud for some of you guys watching or listening to the podcast. Quote unquote, weight loss has never required a coach ever. Just write down how much you eat in a week, and if you don't lose weight, eat less than next week. It's literally that simple, and also the only thing 99% of coaches do. Now, whether or not you agree with this statement or not, it is true, right? It is a commodity. Let's say weight loss coaching is a commodity. You can do it anywhere. It's very simple to do. You can find a weight loss calculator online. Yes, maybe the accountability isn't there, but in terms of the process, it's everywhere. You can get it for free. Ozempic is literally a magic pill that takes away your desire to eat, so you automatically lose weight because obviously you're eating less calories, right? Now, losing fat without losing muscle, or building muscle or strength, or rehabbing injuries, or improving your ability to perform in a particular arena takes a real coach. And you can't replace that by Ozempic or ChatGPT. So this right here, guys, and none of you really on this call have a big problem with this, but before I even talk about sales 101 and I talk about the elements of sales, if your ideal client is kind of putting you in this box, you almost don't even have a real shot. Like it's going to be so hard for you to get clients. It's going to be so hard for you guys to get to where you want to go. Whereas when you guys put yourself in this box, which is being more of, let's say, a specialist versus a generalist, now you have better positioning, right? Now you're positioned a lot better inside of the minds of your ideal types of clients. So what this person is saying is that a lot of the coaches who plug like online calculators to talk about calories and macros are going to have a hard time, and the few qualified coaches, which is you guys, are going to have an easier time because their competition is going to disappear with Ozempic, with ChatGPT, and whatever else is going to come in the coming years. And I agree with this statement wholeheartedly. I've been talking about some of this stuff for a while. It's just a lot more potent now with some of these different elements that are coming out, in terms of different options that your ideal clients has to achieve their goals. And it's just about you communicating your services better and differently. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, because you want to understand what is your argument. And I'm not saying, I don't mean argument in terms of like you get into an argument with your client or your ideal client. It's more so like, why should someone go with you versus the other options? What makes you different? What is the experience with you that makes you superior to some of these other options that are out there, right? Why is the best decision for your client's health investing in you instead of going through ChatGPT, taking Ozempic, hiring the coach down the street, or the Instagram model $47 ebook online, right? Like this is your sales argument is why should the person that you're trying to attract, you're trying to go after for your coaching, why should they hire you versus all of the other competition out there? When it comes to marketing, when it comes to content, when it comes to everything that we're doing inside of the mastermind, it should always come back to this common theme, right? Is what makes you different. Why should I go with you? And it's not coming from the energy of like you trying to prove yourself, right? Or you being needy. It's just more so educating them on, hey, here's what happens if you go this way. Here's what happens if you go with me, right? And kind of painting those pictures and let them decide. But a slow drip of education with different angles and different positioning is important. And you want to do this before you have sales conversations. This is why content is important in that respect, is because it starts to pre-frame some of these quote unquote arguments in a way that positions you as the logical next best step, right? And this is something that we can all do a better job of when it comes to content, when it comes to conversations, and getting your ideal type of client in the buying journey, which I'm about to outline here in a second. So, starting with this stuff is so important. Now, if it's not Ozempic, if it's not ChatGPT, let's say, because that's a pretty, I would say, general competitor. You would need a pretty general ideal client to be able to have that as your competitor. For you guys, insert whatever other decision it is that they might make, right? Without going with you. That the sales argument is why should they go with you versus do that? And we want to consistently reinforce that when it comes to content and when it comes to the buying journey, which I'm about to unpack here today. So, first step, which is what I just shared here, in terms of the three main steps I'm going to talk about when it comes to online coaching sales, is number one, become one of one, right? You guys know what I mean by that. Is instead of becoming just a coach where I could hire hundreds of coaches, thousands of coaches, how can you become one of one, like a perfect glove fit solution for your ideal type of client where I can't compare, let's say I'm your ideal client. I can't compare you to anyone else because you have a certain way of doing things, right? Or because you have a certain unique protocol or a certain ideal client or a certain education or knowledge base that I can't necessarily get anywhere else, right? Like one of the biggest things I do with some of my private clients is we double down on that right away because the stronger your positioning on what makes you different and the more we can frame your coaching and what your offer is as apples and oranges in terms of like I can't compare apples to apples because you are an orange, right? Like you are different. Now all of a sudden the price that you charge, now all of a sudden the positioning that you have in the sales container is so much stronger. And becoming one of one is the first step to fixing a broken sales process or increasing your conversion rate. Because the more differentiated you are, the more unique you are, not in terms of like going too far with this stuff and like niching yourself out of a niche, but just having something that is more rare equals more valuable, right? It's just supply and demand, for example. So understanding how to become one of one is important. This is a really good screenshot. I'm going to show you two of these. You guys can screenshot these if you want. I highly recommend creating something like this and either having it on your website, having it on your value video, some way where you can visually communicate the difference of going with you versus going with some of the different, let's say, competition that you might have. So this is a quick screenshot from one of my past clients, Mauro. You guys have seen his training that he did inside of the mastermind, or if you haven't yet, it's inside of the live recordings. He's a seven-figure online coach, and this is on his landing page. This graph that I just pulled here, and you can see very clearly what he's doing, right? And this is what I'm talking about in terms of become one of one. What he's doing is he's positioning his method, which is what this is, as superior to a personal trainer, to a nutritionist, and to a functional medicine practitioner, right? And he's showing everything that you get with the kinetic method, which is his unique method, versus what you don't get with a personal trainer, what you don't get with a nutritionist, what you don't get with a functional medicine practitioner. So just this one graphic, let's say right here, speaks 1,000 words, right? And holds up his argument and what his positioning is in a very, very strong way. Because I'm assuming for Morrow, I'm assuming for him, his competition or maybe some objections that he used to get or whatever it may be were hiring personal trainers, nutritionists, or functional medicine, right? That was probably his competition. So him creating a graph like this just totally eliminates it because clearly the highest value that they can get while looking at this is the kinetic method. And then he's going through what they get with him. And it doesn't have to be rocket science, right? Like it's not like anything here is revolutionary or like totally, totally different. It's just understanding, okay, what are some of the elements that you're not getting in some of my competition? And then how can I make sure that I'm providing more value than them, specific for his ideal client? And he works with busy, successful businessmen. That's his ideal client. But this right here, like this is worth like screenshot this, hiring someone on Fiverr for like whatever, 20 bucks, 100 bucks, depending on who you get, and creating something like this because you will use this thousands of times in terms of your sales process, in terms of your value video, whatever it may be. This is a really good way to visually communicate the difference of hiring you and your unique method versus some of your competition. And you guys can insert your own competition here, right? So, like, for example, Justin, I'll use you if you don't mind. They could go through your process and your method, or because, and Justin works with like tactical athletes, right? Or they could do a Train Heroic subscription with no accountability and just workouts, right? Or they could do it themselves because your ideal clients are kind of hard headed sometimes and want to do everything themselves and they don't get any of this. Or they could use ChatGPT or whatever else your competition is, right? Like this could be a really good quick graph that you could speak to for 30 seconds to 2 minutes on your value video and just immediately eliminate some of those thoughts that they have in their mind in terms of some other things that they could try. So that's one example. Another example, and this one's a little bit more advanced because Morrow does blood work. Morrow has a team, right? So he has like a chiropractor. What else does he have? He has a nutritionist. So this one might be a little bit more advanced for some of you guys, but this is a pretty good one. This is another one-on-one client I'm working with, and they did a very similar thing, right? Just obviously different branding, but for them, they realized that okay, for their biggest competition, it was different traditional personal trainers and then ChatGPT advice, right? So what they're doing is they're positioning what their program is, and this is their 1 year one-on-one coaching program. You guys can screenshot this for ideas as well if you want. And this is their program. They get everything here. And then they're showcasing how you're not getting that in a personal trainer. You're not getting that with ChatGPT, right? So, why am I sharing this before I get into the next step? Is because the rise of ChatGPT, the rise of Ozempic, the rise of whatever else your competition is, it shouldn't scare you because we can position yourself as superior, right? And we can make tweaks and adjustments to your offering, increase the value of it, maybe go even deeper in some different elements of your offer or your ideal type of client to make sure that you can become one of one. Because when you become one of one, you control your own game. And that's what we want to do inside of the marketplace. It doesn't matter what's happening with pharmaceutical drugs. It doesn't matter who the president is. It doesn't matter any of these different things because you're now one of one. And being able to create this positioning and this container is the first most important step in sales because it would be a mistake for me to come on here and train you guys on sales psychology, train you guys on how to handle this objection, how to handle that objection. Like let me call a spade a spade. Like who wants to actually handle objections? Like that's annoying in my opinion. I'd rather pre-handle all those objections through my content and through stuff like this instead of hopping on a phone with someone and trying to convince them to join my coaching program. right? So being able to do this well before you even have that sales call, that's what we want to do. Because once they have that call with you, and this is everything that the value video is as well, once they have that call with you, they should be 80% of the way there. And that's kind of the container that we want to create. And that's the power of becoming one of one. Like even for McKenna and Jacob, for you guys, I mean, you guys have done more market research than I have, but is there another fitness coach who focuses on um like busy professionals who don't have kids?
Not that we've found.
There you go. You guys
Like,
you guys
yeah,
potentially are one of one, right?
yeah.
Which is awesome.
But yeah, I think one of the things though about what you're saying here is I think the way that I approach like the Ozempic conversation is some of the physicians now, I'm going to say some very loosely because a lot of them, I hope nobody has any hard feelings about this. Some of them are ignorant and you know what I mean? They have their knowledge around a lot of things is minuscule. When it comes to nutrition, exercise, all that kind of stuff. So now some of the physicians are getting smarter and saying, like I had a client recently that said, we're not going to, the doctor said, I'm not going to prescribe this to you unless you're working with a personal trainer and nutritionist.
Mm,
And
smart.
so it's like we have to embrace it because people need these things if they want to maintain lean muscle mass, if they want to build the right habits, if all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of the way I've been handling the Ozempic objection is like, sure, you can take that, but if you lose enough muscle mass and you lose enough, tissue on your body, you're going to lose bone density. And, there's a lot of like, especially women that are losing their hair and, they just kind of look like emaciated, like they got out of a concentration camp.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of how I've been approaching it. And it seems to be pretty well received when I have conversations with people about it.
Yeah. 100%, man. Yeah, we've all seen kind of the horror stories of some of the effects of Ozempic, but um, it just goes back to the old adage, like no one real hack with your health and fitness. Like you have to,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
you have to. It can help depending on the situation, right? Like
sure.
every situation is unique, but what you guys offer, all of you guys, and everyone watching the replay, what you guys offer is the path, right? In terms of sustainability, in terms of long-term health, longevity. And that's how we need to position it. 1000%. Bang on. Anyway, but back to my point I was making for you guys and your ideal client, like that right there is positioning yourself as specialized, as potentially one of one, right? And that's what we want to do. So you're very much on the right path with that end of things. Anyway, three main elements to finish up this point here, guys, is number one, what problem do you solve? For who do you solve it for? And then how do you solve it in a unique way that they can't find anywhere else? These are kind of like the three golden questions, if you will, to achieving this. And you're just dialing in these three main questions, right? Because if you answer these three questions in your head right now, and you think, oh, you know what, I'm still not totally there. I still kind of sound general, then that's okay. Maybe you just need to go one or two levels deeper here, right? Or maybe you just have to go a little bit deeper here with your ideal client. Or maybe we just need to rethink your protocol and go a little bit deeper here, right? So we're just kind of dialing in these three main elements, which are the answers to these questions to achieve this. It's very simple actually. And this is how we can position what you guys do to set up the sale in the most effective way. And if you don't do this, if the problem you solve is very general, if the ideal client that you have is very general and you don't really have a unique system at all, sales is going to be hard for you, especially online. So, understanding these three elements and making it unique to you, that's the name of the game. And Tim's actually a great example. Is another one of my one-on-one clients, and this he totally came up with this, which is great. So I can't take credit for this at all. But before, this was like maybe a month or so ago, he was kind of in the fat loss camp where everybody's in the fat loss camp, right? When it comes to online coaches, he's a cut above 100%, but the positioning wasn't as strong as it could be. So he went through all of his client questions. He went through like a lot of the calls that he had with clients, and he realized that one of the biggest things that they struggled with the most was recomposition. Right, that was one of the biggest things that they were asking questions about. They were coming to him with, and is a more specialized problem to solve than just, let's say, fat loss 101. Right. So for him, over the last few weeks, this is just a slight tweak and adjustment to what his positioning is, but he's starting to achieve this, and he's just playing with these questions. He's just playing with these questions. So for him, he teaches men. We could go a little bit deeper with that. How to master the recomp. Okay, so that's a more sophisticated problem to solve than, let's say, just weight loss, just fat loss, whatever it may be, transformation with his macro intuitive protocol. So that's his specific way, which I think is actually pretty cool because there's macros, right, with coaching, but then there's also intuitive eating. And what he did is he merged those two things together. And that's his unique process with his coaching. So he's just kind of dialing in these three main questions that I just taught you guys in his specific way to come up with a more powerful positioning with his content. Right. So there's just a real time example. And this might continue to change because we're still tweaking it. But this might continue to change. And that's one thing I want to say too, is that just because you come up with your positioning, you don't have to be married to it forever for the rest of your coaching career, right? If you notice that something isn't hitting the way it's supposed to hit, or you can go a little bit deeper in this one area, you can tweak and adjust things slightly to make sure that you're hitting the nail on the head. And you'll know when you hit the nail on the head because the response rate that you get with your marketing or the sales process, whatever it may be, will start to feel smoother. That's how you're going to know if you're making good progress or not. So that's a good real-time example. And just one last thing I want to say here is don't fall into the drift of mediocrity. And what I mean by that is that a lot of time coaches will go through this process, and when you first go through this process, and you're tweaking and adjusting your marketing, there's an on-ramp process that needs to take place, right? So what do I mean by on-ramp process? I mean you need to create some content for a period of time to slowly educate your audience and get your audience on board with some of the changes that you're making, right? It's not an immediate overnight fix. It takes a little bit of time to really find your footing with this. And some coaches will do that and they'll get scared because they don't get clients right away or they're not seeing results right away or whatever it may be. And then they immediately revert back to a very general offer. And maybe it gets them a couple of quick clients for whatever, 200, $300 a month, whatever it may be. And it gets them quick cash. But they just totally threw all the work that we did out the window. And now they're generalized again. And now they're inside of this box. And they might have gotten a few quick clients from it, but they still have the exact same problem that they've always had, and they can't work their way out of it because they're not achieving this, right? And they're just creating a jail for themselves, especially when it comes to online. So making sure that you don't do this in a dip or in a slow day or a slow week is one of the most important things to keep top of mind because this takes a little bit of time and fine tuning and tweaking and adjusting. But once you do it, sales become a lot easier, which is exactly what I'm going to talk about inside of step two. So this is nothing you guys don't already know per se. I've taught a lot about this inside of the mastermind, inside of the next trainings that you guys have gone through or are going to go through. But this is a good quick reminder is establishing the gap inside of your conversations with your content, whatever it may be. Because first, becoming one of one is important because you're positioned well. Now you have conversations flowing. Now you have people raising their hand wanting to do the assessment or a clinic or whatever your call to action is. And you're starting to get some dialogue back and forth with your ideal clients, right? Like this is the second step. You're positioned well, you're making good content. Now we're having conversations with our ideal clients. This is the second step. So your goal with conversations is essentially this, right? Is establishing the gap because it's just the distance between where they're at now and where they want to get to. That is it's very, very simple. They're here, they're in a problem, they have something that they want to change, they want to get to here, but they don't know how, or they've been trying for the last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and it hasn't been working. So this is the current situation that they're in. Now, for you guys, as online coaches, getting clients online, positioning your offer, before you talk about your offer, before you talk about any of that stuff, really, you need to understand what this looks like for the individual that you're speaking to, right? Because if you don't, you can't properly position your coaching because your coaching is positioned here, right in the middle of the current situation and the desired situation, right? It's the bridge, right? If we don't have these two data points, you have no foundation to have that conversation. You just simply don't. So, understanding how to do this is key. And it's very simple, easier said than done in terms of me just quickly going through this with you guys. But these are the kind of data points that you want to hit. And data points is just a way for me to say these are the things that you need to get inside of the conversation to take the next step, right? To help position what your services are, send a value video, offer a call, whatever it may be. So the first one is clarity on the current situation, right? What's the main problem that they want solved? This is more logical based because they might say lose 20 pounds. They might say, I want to be more athletic. There's a certain like tangibleness to what the answer to this question is. Now, here's the thing. If you guys just get the answer to this question and then you stop and you move forward and you position your coaching, what are you doing? You're positioning yourself as a commodity again, right? You haven't gone deeper in the sense of understanding a more valuable problem that you can solve for this ideal client. Because surface level problems take surface level solutions. Surface level solutions are not high ticket coaching. So this is key, and this is where I see a lot of coaches screw up the sales process is because they're asking surface level questions, and then they're trying to position a big high ticket one-on-one coaching program, but it doesn't match, right? Because you're asking surface level questions. You need to ask a couple of deeper questions so that you can position what your coaching program is and it matches, right? So even if let's say they want to lose 20 pounds, which is okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Let's go a couple levels deeper, right? Like, how is this affecting, and depending on the person and depending on what you're talking about, how is this affecting other areas in life, right? Their energy, their confidence, their finances, their relationship, their business, whatever it may be. This is more the emotional end of things. How do we make decisions as humans? Emotionally, always, always. We we think it's logical. That's how we trick ourselves in thinking, hey, yeah, that was a good decision. And you'll back it up with logic. But how we actually make the decision to hire you is always rooted in some sort of emotion. Always. So if you guys are missing this question in your, let's say, DM process, or you're reconnecting with old clients or whatever it may be, whatever that dialogue looks like, you're not setting up the positioning for a value video or whatever it may be in the best possible way. And this question here, this is one of the biggest ones for proper positioning and one of the ones I see most online coaches miss. So that's very important. And then the last one here, this is more optional, but something that again really helps with sending value videos is what have they tried before, right? Reason being is because this question is totally in alignment with what we're talking about here and the questions that we're asking. But for example, if I'm sending a value video, right, I'm sending one to you, David, right? And I know that you've done Orange Theory before. I know that you did the CrossFit WODs for the last year and a half and just totally burnt out, crush your nervous system. I know that you've tried counting calories, and all three of those things haven't worked for you, right? So before I talk about my trifecta protocol, which is my health and fitness coaching system, I'm first going to help you understand maybe why you failed with counting calories, doing Orange Theory, doing CrossFit, and why it didn't work for you. And why, if you continue to do those things, that you're just going to dig your hole deeper and deeper and deeper, and you're wasting some of your prime training years. And then I'm going to talk about my system, right? And then I'm going to talk about why my system can work for you in a more superior way than Orange Theory, CrossFit, and counting calories. So this, let's say, quote unquote, data point, which is how I'm explaining it, what they tried before, it makes your argument, your value video, some of the stuff that you're talking about, so much more stronger. So that's why these three main questions are super, super important for the sales process because again, it makes the logical next step to hire you or whatever that call to action is just automatic. Just it just flows. It fits like a glove, right? That's the first data point that you want is the current situation. Then the next one, which is very, very simple as well, is what's their goal? Where do they want to get to? What does this look like? Now, sometimes these are the same things, right? Like, what's the main health problem that you want, or what's the main goal that you want to achieve? Maybe losing 20 pounds, just as an example, is the health problem, but it's also the goal, right? That's okay. That's killing two birds with one stone. But you can go a little bit deeper here, right? Like, why is this goal important to you? What happens if nothing changes? COI means cost of inaction. What happens if nothing changes? Because there, and I talked about this in one of the last podcasts, no matter what decision they make, if it's, I think Justin, we were talking about this, no matter what decision they make, if they hire you or if they hire someone else or if they do nothing, they're paying no matter what. And here's what I mean. They're either paying you, which is whatever the investment is to work with you, or they're doing nothing and they're paying in terms of their time, staying stuck, mediocrity, staying in their painful problem for another year, 2 years, 3 years. So we want to communicate that in a ethical way because that is the decision. That is the decision that's happening. So understanding these data points in your conversation is also important because now we understand the gap. And this is your coaching program, how we can position it in the best possible way. Because now you understand where they're at, where they want to get to, and now you can position your process and what working with you looks like. And this is, again, nothing some of you guys don't already know, but the data points, three questions here, three questions here, that's all you need. That gives you so much ammo, let's say, to send an effective value video, position a call, hop on a call, whatever it may be, whatever you want your next process to be. This does all the heavy lifting for you, is the answers to these questions. And if you don't get an answer to some questions, that's okay. As long as you get like the main problem and where they want to get to, what their goal is, that should give you enough. If the conversation isn't flowing, then that should give you enough. If the conversation is flowing and you can ask some deeper questions and follow up, then take it for sure because you want to get all the details that you can get. But that's the gap. And this is how you can send powerful, powerful value videos on the back of these conversations. So before I move forward to the last step here, and the last step is one of the most important. Any questions on the gap or on becoming one of one? You guys are all good? Okay, cool. So now I'm going to talk about the last one here, creating the buying pocket. So the buying pocket is when someone's ready to make a purchasing decision. Um, One of the biggest elements here is timing for them. So what do I mean by timing for them? A lot of times your ideal clients will have just gone through maybe some sort of a life event. Maybe there was a health scare, or maybe there was a little bit of a wake up call for them in some way. There was some sort of timing with they had a bit. This is a perfect example. Super busy time of year in the summer. They're on holidays, whatever it may be. Now the kids are going back to school, and it's September, and now they're getting back into routine whatever it may be, timing for them, external triggers, holidays, whatever, bonuses, just got a new job, whatever it may be, timing for them is important to understand. Is when is the best time for your ideal client to make a decision? And taking that into account with your sales process is key. So I'm going to come back to this, but just think about this for a minute. Timing for them is one aspect of the buying pocket, and then also timing for you. So what do I mean timing for you? Is there a specific date that you're opening and closing your coaching program on, right? Let's say, for example, you're launching your coaching program September 1st, and then you're closing it on September 10th, right? That's your promo. That's timing for you, right? Maybe you have a special bonus or an offer at the end of your 3-day assessment or a clinic or something along those lines, but then it expires. That's you creating timing. That's you creating the buying pocket for yourself. Now, here's the magic is when you match these two things together. Okay, so let me explain this. It's very simple once I explain it. If you notice, and you need to be in business for a couple years to like really understand this and hit the nail on the head, but if you notice that your ideal clients and your just business, let's say, gets really busy in certain times of year. Let's say March, May, September, just as an example. Let's say these are some of your best months. And for whatever reason, your ideal client is just really engaged in these months and they make buying decisions. And it's just the time of year for them to invest inside of health coaching. And you just notice this. You're starting to notice these trends, right, inside of your coaching business. And on the flip side as well, like maybe August is always notoriously a slow month, right? Not that I'm putting false beliefs out there, but December notoriously a slow month, depending on your ideal client. Well, what I would do is I would strategically choose those busiest months that you guys have inside your coaching business because that's timing for them, right? What I just explained. And I would create promo sequences like calling in clients, launches, assessments, a lot of the stuff you guys are doing currently, and I would strategically plan those for these months that are your busiest months and insert whatever those are for you, because what we're doing is we're kind of taking the energy that's already there and we're just like putting gasoline on a fire, if you will, and we're creating a buying pocket. And a buying pocket is just this container that we're creating for your ideal types of clients to make a decision. And if it's already a good time of year normally for them to make decisions and they're already listening, you already have their attention, then us creating a promo, us calling in clients, us having a specific open and close window for your one-on-one coaching, it just takes that energy and accelerates it. So the equation here, timing for them versus reason to buy equals faster sales. That's kind of the equation here when it comes to the buying pocket. So for us and for you guys inside your individual coaching businesses, and it's very dependent on your ideal client. Like I work with some people who work primarily with athletes, and the athlete calendar is very different than, let's say, the busy professional calendar in terms of when the busier times of year are for you. But for you guys, kind of having a finger on the pulse is what you want to do. And then when it comes to mapping out your year of promos, calling in clients, and things like that, you want to strategically plan them for some of those busiest times because that's when you have the most amount of attention, right? And this is when you can create a really good buying pocket for your ideal types of clients to make a decision. So this step here is also a very important one because I see a lot of coaches, not necessarily my clients, but just like coaches in general, and their coaching is just like always open, right? Like, hey, my coaching's open 365 days out of the year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, come when you want. And when you do that, it like people are always going to kick the can down the road if they always know that they can get in, right? Whereas when you have an open and close model, now, okay, I need to make a decision because it's going to close at a certain time. And what I'm saying is strategically do this on the busiest times a year so that you can get decisions. And that's what I mean by the buying pocket, right? Because if you get a bunch of maybes from someone, that's not the buying pocket. That's not someone making a decision. That's someone kicking the can down the road. We want decisions. So being able to create the conditions for making a decision on some of the busiest times a year are some things that you guys want to do. So this is a great time of year to be able to plan this out because we're going into Q4. We've got one more month of Q3. Um, but we want to strategically understand, okay, for September, October, November, December, for you guys, what are the busiest times of the month for those 4 months, right? Or which one or two of those months do you think would be busiest for you? How can we develop a protocol? How can we develop some promos in those months to make sure that we're getting decisions for your ideal clients? And then from there, come December, let's plan out the rest of your 2026 in terms of your busiest months and make sure that we're creating buying pockets for your ideal clients to make decisions. So if it's promos, launches, bonuses, special offers, we want to make sure that we strategically place those on your busiest months so we have an uptick in sales because the attention's already there. So coaches who don't do this, they sometimes waste those opportunities, right? And we don't want to do that. So that's what I mean by the buying pocket. And this is something I haven't talked about before, but is an important element to generating more leads, getting more sales, and converting more inside of your one-on-one coaching. So with that being said, guys, I want to leave a little bit of time at the end for some questions. But first, sales summary. Three main things that I talked about today. Number one, become one of one. That's the most important thing because everything downstream of that works better when you're positioned as more unique, right? And more specialized. That's the first thing. Second thing, create the gap with your ideal clients. This is stuff I've been talking about for years. You guys already know this. But there's three very simple questions you can ask for the problem, and then three very simple questions you can ask for the goal to create that gap. So then you guys can actually talk about your coaching, send value videos, and create the opportunity to talk about what it would look like to work with you. If you don't effectively do this, then we can't take the next step when it comes to sales, right? And then the last thing is develop buying pockets throughout your calendar year. So what are, just like I said, what are those busiest times a year? How can we create promo opportunities inside of those years, or sorry, those times of year to be able to get decisions and get ideal types of clients raising their hand and getting more consistent sales inside of your coaching? So those are things to think about. Anyway, next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through retention more. I didn't have time to go through it today, but we're going to go through retention and understanding how to solve a problem for the front end of your coaching program and then solve a different problem on the back end of your coaching program, which is more retention based. So we're going to talk about that next week. But this is sales, some sales stuff 101 for now. Any questions on this, guys? Got to run. No worries, Justin. Take care, man. Any questions on this stuff, guys, before I let you go for today?
Yeah, for like the buying pocket, are you only using that during those busy times? Or are you creating that sometimes, like trying to create a buying pocket in your slow times? Or
Yeah, that's a really good question, man. So I have two different answers for that. Normally for my, I would only create it for the busiest times. Reason being is because that's when I know I have the most amount of attention. So if I have the most amount of attention, I want to make sure I'm converting as much as possible, right? Because they're already there. They're already listening. They're already potentially going to make a decision anyway. So this just makes sure that I can convert the most and get the most amount of clients, so that that can sustain me through some slower months. So that's what I always focus on first is instead of getting, let's say, three clients in a buying pocket, why don't we aim for six, right? Or why don't we aim for eight? And then we can go from there. So that's what we focus on first. But then when it comes to some of the slower times of your year, sometimes I will create a buying pocket if needed. So if like it's just a dry month or going into a slow season, notoriously slow season for you, and you want to put your best foot forward to get clients, then I would create a buying pocket if you need to. But we just want to be careful with the buying pockets because if we're always creating them throughout the year, then it kind of lowers the effectiveness of it because you're always promoting something, right? Like you're always opening and closing your coaching. So we want to be careful with it and make sure that we don't cross a line with doing it too much. But you can absolutely create it during a slow season as well. Um, and not to go too off the rails with your question there, David, but what I also sometimes recommend for some clients, and we actually talked about this on our call on Monday, with you creating customers, right? Instead of creating clients, is during slow seasons, sometimes what I'll recommend to my clients is how can we maybe have a lower barrier to entry offer where we can generate leads to become customers, right? With a $100 product or $200 product, whatever it may be, to just get into our world to slowly develop a relationship with some of these people. And then when we open our coaching a month from now or 2 months from now, those are the warmest people that we have, right? And we can create some of those people during a slow season. So that's another angle to kind of go with it. Like, for example, for what you do during the holidays, that's a good way to create customers. And then when we open up your buying pocket, let's say in January after the holidays, all of those people, those are the people for the buying pocket afterwards, right? So those are two different ways to go about it. But during a slow season, A, if you need to create a buying pocket, we absolutely can. Or B, we can have like a different offer to create customers. And then those are the people who will become clients in our next buying pocket as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, man. Good question. Good question. But like to go even deeper on that, just for people watching the replay as well, to give you an example, if I were to create a buying pocket um, periodically throughout my coaching business, the max I would do it is every other month, the max. Preferably less, like maybe once a quarter. But every other month is kind of the maximum I would create buying pockets because buying pockets take a certain amount of energy in terms of like you're opening your coaching, we're creating promotional material around it. We're following up. Like it's not just marketing, right? We're also following up with, hey, who are all the leads that you have on your list that are the warmest? We're going to individually send voice notes or send value videos and say, like, hey, Jacob, hey, McKenna. I know we've been going back and forth on Instagram over the last couple of months. I wanted to let you guys know that I actually am opening up the Lifestyle Wealth Mastermind. It's opened for September 1st. I want to personally invite you guys because I think you'd be a good fit because of A, B, and C. Let me know if you're interested. We can book in a quick call. We can go from there, right? Like I would be sending out all those messages to the warmest leads that I have as well during my buying pocket because it's a good like let's say excuse if you will to reach out, right, and to make an offer because we're officially opening a Lifestyle Wealth Mastermind. Whereas if McKenna and Jacob knew that, oh yeah, this is always open, you can come whenever you want, the positioning just isn't there as strongly, right? Just as an example. So that's the other side to buying pockets. It's not just marketing, it's also boots on the ground. Let's invite some of our highest value leads that we have in our pipeline to make sure that we're booking calls, sending value videos, and doing the things that we need to do to drive sales.